communicated by the Pope, unquote. Quote, the Pope is, as it were, God on earth, sole sovereign of the faithful of Christ, chief King of kings, having plenitude of power, to whom has been entrusted by the omnipotent God direction, not only of the earthly but also of the heavenly kingdom, unquote. If that's not blasphemy according to the definition, then I don't know what is, folks. Quote, the Pope can modify divine law, and since his power is not of man, but of God, unquote. The Pope can modify divine law? Well, you see that he did. He changed the day of rest, dictated by God, from the seventh day to the first day, and he changed the Ten Commandments to allow the worship of idols. But the doctrine of papal supremacy is directly opposed to the teachings of any scripture that I am able to find. Quote, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve, quote, unquote. That's in Luke chapter 4, verse 8. God has never given a hint in his word that he appointed any man but Christ to be the head of the church. The Bible exalts God and places finite men in their true position. The Pope has no power over Christ's church except by usurpation, and that's true only if you are a Christian. If you are a Jew, if you are a Muslim, if you are a Buddhist, none of that is true, is it? By the 6th century, folks, the papacy was firmly established. Its seat of power was fixed in the imperial city, and the Bishop of Rome was declared to be the head over the entire church. Pagan Rome had given place to papal Rome. The ascension of the Roman Church to power marked the beginning of the Dark Ages. As her power increased, the darkness of superstition and error deepened. Those were days of pearl for the Church of Christ. Faithful standard-bearers were few. At times it seemed that error and superstition would wholly prevail, and true religion would be banished from the earth. The gospel was lost sight of, and the forms of religion were multiplied. People were taught not only to look to the Pope as their mediator, but to trust to works of their own to atone for sin. Long pilgrimages, acts of penance, the worship of relics, the erection of churches, shrines, and altars, the payment of large sums to the church, these and many similar acts were enjoined to appease the wrath of God or to secure his favor. As if God were like men, to be angered at trifles or pacified by gifts or acts of penance, and even then the church still worshipped the old gods. For in dismantling churches for renovation throughout Europe, without exception, and the older the church, the more likely it was to be true, enshrined within the altar, out of sight of the priests and the worshippers, were found stone penises, symbols of the lost word of Freemasonry, the phallus of Osiris, the generative force of the pagan religion of the worship of the sun, the light, Lucifer, the intellect. This is historic fact. This is not invention, but fact. About the close of the 8th century, Papists put forth the claim that in the first ages of the Church, the bishops of Rome had possessed the same spiritual power which they now assumed. To establish this claim, ancient writings were forged by monks, and it has been proven that they were forged. Decrees of councils before unheard of were discovered, establishing the universal supremacy of the Pope from the earliest times, and a church that had rejected the truth greedily accepted these deceptions. Another step in papal assumption was taken when in the 11th century Pope Gregory VII proclaimed the perfection of the Roman Church. Among the propositions which he put forth was one declaring that the Church had never erred, nor would it ever err, according to the Scriptures. But I wonder what they told Galileo when they imprisoned him for being right, that the earth revolved around the sun, and that the earth was not the center of the universe, and that the universe did not revolve around the earth. I wonder what they told Galileo. How did they justify being right when they were obviously wrong? And not only with Galileo, but Giordano Bruno and many others. many others, as a matter of fact, many of whom were burned at the stake for daring to disagree with what was then considered to be politically correct. For many of them had discovered scientific truths, and when they espoused these truths, were declared to be heretics and were burned at the stake because the Pope declared these truths to be falsehoods. And that, folks, was the birth of the doctrine known as political correctness. And you see it reappearing now, where truths are again declared to be false because they are not politically correct. What are you going to accept in this world? Now, once again, I want to tell you, we're not attacking anyone. I care not what you believe. I care not what altar you worship at, for I am a true constitutionalist. It makes no difference to any of you what my religion is, although I will freely tell you that I attempt in my daily life to follow the true words of Christ, not the doctrine or the preachings of any church or any evangelist or any book, but those words attributed to Christ and only to Christ. And as the rock upon which those words stand, the 10 Commandments as given to Moses by God. That is the sum total of my religion, of my beliefs, of what I practice in my daily life. I'm not asking you to do that at all. But I am asking everyone to quit accepting what they are told, to begin an honest, individual, personal search for the truth. For we can no longer live in deception. We can no longer live the lies of the past. Great change lies ahead of us, folks. Change will come whether we want it or not, for that is the way of the world and the way of the universe. And if we are still living in lies and deceptions and manipulations, then that change will be for the bad, just as it has always been throughout the history of the world, and blood will flow and people will suffer, all in the name, once again, of religion. And I, for one, am sick of it. Sick of it. We must discover the truth, and we must lead our lives by the truth, and we must take the truth into the future, and we must determine the future from the truth, and nothing else. Nothing else. For if we do not, those who have decided that they are the only truly mature minds, and thus the only ones capable of rule, because the rest of us do not use our intelligence, and thus are beasts of burden and stakes on the table by choice and consent, no better than animals who do not have intelligence. They have determined that they are going to shackle us once again in slavery, because we cannot control ourselves, or rule ourselves, or live by the truth. This is what they have determined, right or wrong, whether you believe them or whether you believe that they know what they claim that they know or not. It is what they have determined, and I assure you they are in control right now. Right now. Right this moment. And in this country, their headquarters is in the temple without windows, exactly 13 blocks from the White House, the headquarters of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. Now, when the Pope declared that the Church had never erred, nor would it ever err, according to the Scriptures, the scriptural proofs did not accompany the assertion. Next, the proud pontiff claimed the power to depose emperors and declared that no sentence which he pronounced could be reversed by anyone, but that it was his prerogative to reverse the decisions of all others. The advancing centuries witnessed a constant increase of error in the doctrines put forth from Rome. Even before the establishment of the papacy, the teachings of heathen philosophers had received attention and exerted an influence in the Church. Prominent among these was the belief in man's natural immortality and his consciousness in death. This doctrine laid the foundation upon which Rome established the invocation of saints and the adoration of the Virgin Mary. From this sprang also the heresy of eternal torment for the finally impenitent, which was early incorporated into the papal faith.